Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome to my Raiders 2021 season review. This one's a bit of a weird one just because of the season that they had. So yeah, let's just jump into it. So 10 wins, 78% completion rate, pretty much 100 meters more conceded per game than gained. 81 tries scored, 99 conceded, 21 tries from 6 against, 18 conceded, and 229 offloads. So, the Raiders. I don't think anyone expected them to have the season that they had this year. Alright? And anyone that says they did, I'm calling a liar. Right? Because, the squad that they have, they're a top 14. Like, straight up, they are a top 14. With the squad that they have, the players that they have in key positions. Obviously, injuries derailed their season quite a bit. Like, they had injuries to a couple of very important players to them, which we'll talk about in a bit later with the certain players. But even still, with that, they still should have very easily made the top 8. Like, I predicted them to finish second. Right? Because I thought this would be their last year where they could really compete for a grand final before falling down the pecking order. But obviously, that's happened. Excuse me. It's obviously come a year early. Right? So, with the stats, honestly, they're very... Sounds kind of weird, but they're very, bland stats. There's nothing that really sticks out where you could look at it and say, oh, if they'd done this better, then this would have happened, or if they'd done that better, that would have happened. Like, statistically, they had a decent... Obviously, they needed to concede less tries. Obviously, but... you can say that about any team in that came in the bottom 8. But realistically, they had a good season. Like they had well worked plays, they had good structures set in place. Like I said before, they've got good players. They have in my opinion, a good coach in Ricky Stewart. But yeah, I think what happened really was just the off-field issues really just hit them like a truck. I think it hit them a lot worse than was probably expected. And then on top of that, I think for me personally, losing what's his name, John Bateman, I think that's his name, Bateman. Losing him was actually a very big loss to them. I don't think people, including myself, really gave enough credit to him and what he actually provided for the team. So, yeah, I mean, surprising season to say the least. Like I said, statistically, you wouldn't really expect statistically, very even statistics across the board. Obviously, like I said, less tries conceded would have been better. But yeah, I think overall off-field stuff is really what derailed their season. I think all the off-field stuff, obviously with Bateman leaving and the debacle that came from him wanting to leave and all that sort of stuff. And then, what's his name, George Williams, all the debacle that came from him being homesick and all these other things. I think it really just derailed their season. And then obviously a few little injuries sprinkled in here and there also didn't help. Alright, so we'll talk about the individuals. Firstly, Ricky Stewart. Like I said, I think he's a good coach. Obviously, we all know he was a phenomenal player. And I think what he did as a player, he's been able to take into his coaching, especially because he played in the halves. So he understands, he was always one of those players that was fantastic at reading the game. You could see it when he played, just mentally for him, he was able to break down every single tackle at a time. It's like he was playing in slow motion. Everyone else would be going at 100k, 100 miles a minute. And it looked like he was going at 10 miles a minute because, he knew what was going to happen before it happened, And having that as a player is good when you're going into trying to be a coach because, I feel like mentally he would know and understand all the situations that his players would be in. So he can set up structures and he can set up game plans surrounding those things. And also on top of that, I think he's just genuinely a very smart footy bloke. Obviously the game has changed, over the years since he played, but, he's obviously kept up with the changes because he, like I say, he genuinely just has a good footy head. I think the one thing I think Ricky Stewart struggles with is media. Right? Don't get me wrong, I love a Ricky spray, to the media. Everyone loves a good Ricky spray, but I think as a coach, he needs to tone it back. Because when he says sort of stuff like that will trickle down into the team. And I think he did that a bit too much this year with some of like just the calling out, players, media, and all this sort of stuff. It's sort of like, it can set a bad mentality. And so I think that was also a contributing factor for the Raiders' struggle this season. I don't think it was the main factor, obviously, but, it definitely contributed. You need that coach to be that calm, collected mind, right? That calm, collected, thought process, so like if something's going wrong in a game, you look to him and, he, gets on the headset and says, okay, look, settle it down, do this, 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 and then you can go on. I think Ricky just gets a bit too angry sometimes to do those sort of things. But, regardless, he's still a fantastic coach in my opinion. I think he's a great coach. He's a top 4 coach in my opinion. I think he has like I said, he has the smarts. He's got this, he had the skill when he was a player and he's been able to adapt those skills into coaching. But yeah, honestly, nothing really to say about Ricky Stuart. Just, overall, just a really good coach. And, obviously, I don't see him leaving the Raiders anytime soon. I don't think this season will be like a blip where they're like, oh, no, we've got to sack him now because we had an off-season or some crap like that, I think he'll be around for a couple more years at least, at the bare minimum. All right. So the first player I want to talk about is Josh Hodgson. I really don't know what to think about him. Like, don't get me wrong, he has good moments in games, right? But overall, I think he's pretty average. Like, maybe it's just me. Like, maybe off the ball, or maybe just stuff he says in, like during the game to the other players and all that stuff. Maybe that's really his defining quality and his defining factor. But just watching him on the field, like organizing from 9 and all that sort of stuff, it doesn't seem like he does anything that, fantastic. Like you see, like obviously I'm going to take their word for it. Like, you see like ex-pros, like Freddie Fittler, Joey Johns, like Darren Lockyer and all them, like Cooper Cronk, like they all say, like he's a phenomenal hooker and they would have loved to have played with him and stuff like that, because of what he does. But, so I'm going to take their word for it that he obviously is like, doing a fantastic job. But just like watching it live, it doesn't seem like he does much, especially this season. I feel like he really had an off season. He just did not get through sort of like, I guess, the workload that I don't want to say is expected of him, but I guess in a way is expected of him, like because of the standard that he's set for himself the past couple seasons. But yeah, I don't know. Like this season at least, for me, he was just average. Like at best, if that, like I think he really struggled this season, and I think that's because they lost George Williams. I think people didn't give George Williams enough credit for what he did for that team in simplifying things for the rest of the team to make it easier for them. But yeah, Hodgson, obviously they're looking to shift him on now. So, I don't know, maybe there's something going on behind the scenes. Maybe he's not happy there. Maybe things are going on. Maybe the club just thinks, look, you're getting too old. We need to look for someone younger, something like that, So, maybe that's a factor as to why he didn't play as well this year because of all the stuff going on behind the scenes. I don't know. But yeah, this season I thought he was just average at best. Like, compared to what we know he can do and the impact he can make, I feel like he did not even half of that this season. Yeah. Alright, so next is Jack Wighton. I think this season was a telling season for Jack Wighton. He won the Dally M in 2020, which me personally, I don't think he should have won personally. Like, don't get me wrong, he obviously played well in 2020, but I don't think he was the Dally M player of the year. I think it was Cleary personally, but Cleary or even Gutho. Honestly, I think Gutho had a better season, but that's a story for a different day, a topic for a different day. But I think what happened this year is this season really showed just how much Jack Wighton relies on the rest of his team to really perform. Like, and I know that obviously makes sense. Like you need the rest of your team to get the go for your halves to, play off the back of. Obviously that makes sense. That's how rugby league is. But just the amount of people that, talked Wighton up as being like, the head honcho of the Raiders, like even if things are down in the dumps, he'll still be the one that just like really steps up and carries them and all this sort of stuff. And then, you're watching this season and he didn't. Like this season would have been the perfect season for him to really like stamp his authority and say, yes, I am that Dally M player. Sure, we might be going through a rough patch right now, but I will still carry this team to wins, 2 points. But he didn't do that. And again, I don't know if that's because he personally got hit by all the off-field stuff. Like obviously he lost his halves partner in George Williams. Obviously he lost his support player in Nickel Klokstad. So obviously there are these factors, but if you are going to be like top dog, regardless of missing players, you should still be at the top of your game. And there were times this season where Wighton just was not. He looked again bang average, below average at best. Right? Yeah. Do I think Wighton's a bad player? No, I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I think I think this season was very telling of the. I don't want to say the level he's at because that's not the right term for it. That's not the right way to put it. But just, I think it was just very telling of the type of player he is. Like he's not. Again, it feels weird to say it, but he's not like that. He's not that guy that you just give the ball to and he's going to make something out of nothing every single time, like people seem to think he is. Like, don't get me wrong, there are moments where he can, but he's not the guy that's going to do it every single time. But yeah, again, like good player overall. But yeah, I think just all the off-field stuff and everything that happened this season also just got to him, and he had a bad. I think next season he should come back. I don't think he'll be in the Dally M medalist run next year, but I definitely think he'll have a better season next year now that everything's sort of settled down and the team can sort of just get back to focusing on the footy as opposed to all the off-field stuff that happened this season. Next is Papalii, Josh Papalii. He's a freak. He's an absolute weapon of a player. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, he got injured for a couple of games. I think that was really bad for the Raiders because he is their main go-forward man, and on top of that, he's also their offload man. He's like, he's just such a natural leader for them, and not in the sense of like how he talks and what he says to people and all this sort of stuff, but just through action. Like, when Papalii gets the ball, like, you can see there are times where they'll be, the Raiders as a team, they'll be down in the dumps, they won't be going well. Papalii will get the ball, he'll run 20 metres. Just out of nowhere, he's like, look, the team needs me, I'm going to put him on my back and I'm going to get us started. Right? And, that's what clubs need, that's what Papalii is. Again, I think he had a bit of a down season this year. Again, I think it's because of all the off-field stuff, so... not saying it's an excuse having all the off-field issues, but... it's definitely a contributing factor. So I think Papalii, one of the best front rowers in the comp, one of the best front rowers in the game. But yeah, just had an off season. I think next year he'll probably be back to his best. And then lastly, I mentioned him before, Charles Nickel Klokstad. I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. I'm not great at pronunciations. I know there is a very specific way you have to pronounce it. I've probably done it wrong, so I'm sorry if I have. I think this season shows just how important he is for the Raiders, right? So he was injured for pretty much whole season really, and they struggled massively with it. They had no replay. They chucked Rapana back there for a while. They chucked what's his name, Simonson or something. I can't think of his name off the top. Simonson up, back there for a while. They tried all these different options at the back, and just none of them could compete and cover like the ground that Nickel Klokstad does, right? So I think this season, I've always sort of thought this already. I thought he was one of the best fullbacks in the competition just because of the workload and what he does for the team. Sure, he's not like the super X factor like your Tedesco's or your Tommy Turbos where you chuck him the ball hoping for a miracle and they create it. That's not what he is. But just for a fullback that works in his team's system and completes that system, I think he's one of the best at it. And yeah, for me, this season that showed that because without him, they struggled massively. There'd be times where they'd have their sweeping plays out the back, they'd look for the pass, and obviously he wasn't there because he's injured, and then the play would just die because the other player that was covering just can't do what he can. So I think this year was very unfortunate for him to get injured, but I think in a good way, in a sense, it's sort of highlights just how important he actually is for the Raiders, which I think is a good thing because he's a fantastic player and he deserves a lot more credit than he gets, in my opinion. Yep. And then overall thoughts of the season, like I said at the start, I thought they were going to finish second this year, and like this would be their last season to compete for the grand final. Obviously, that didn't happen. You know, they finished 10th. Right? Yeah. Again, I think it was all because of the off-field issues. You know, like the George Williams saga. You know, Ricky Stewart being under pressure from the media because of said saga, and then he sort of like would blow up in the wrong places at the wrong people, sort of thing like that, which would just trickle down into the team. I think just mentally they all weren't there this season because of all the off-field stuff happening. Obviously, they're professionals. They need to be able to just play through it, but at the end of the day, this stuff will affect you. Right? Especially in a situation like the lockdown they were in, where like not only do they have to deal with that stuff, but they've also got to possibly deal with being away from family, being away from friends, you know. Like, so I get it, you know, but at the same time, like I said, they are professionals. They do need to try and work through it a bit better. But yeah, I think the off-field stuff is the reason they struggle massively this year. Do I think they'll make the top 8 next season? Yes, I think they will be in 6th or 7th next year. I don't think they'll be a top 4 side anymore for the next couple years at least. But yeah, I do think they'll make, you know, 6th or 7th next season, I think, is where they'll end up. But yeah, you know, like I said, really surprising season overall because of everything that happened with them. Will they recover next season? I think so, but, you know, only time will tell. But yeah, with that, guys, that's my Raiders season review. I hope you enjoyed it. And, you know, yeah, like I said with all these videos, if there's anything you think I should add, anything you think I should remove, you know, let me know. I'm happy to do it. You know, anything else you want me to talk about, I'm happy to talk about it. But, yeah, thanks for watching, guys. With that said, yeah, take it easy and, yeah, have a good one.